And we are back with the Think Fitness Life podcast. This is going to be a fun episode. We're doing a little tribute to our influencers, past and present, and hopefully future, right? What we're going to do, though, is Menchie and I are both going to reserve our big three. So we're going to list off names of people who've influenced us in terms of mindset, in terms of fitness, in terms of nutrition, people we've learned from, people we look up to, people who were really profound in their field. And we'll go off and we'll go back and forth. And it's going to be a fun episode, but we're going to save our top three nutrition influencers, fitness influencers, and mindset influencers for the very end. So stay tuned. And before we get going, did you have anything in the news you want to talk about?
Yes, I found some interesting stuff, more along the lines of motivation and the competitiveness. So a study came out, an article came out a couple days ago that says trash talk can really put players off their game. So it was a study done from the University of Connecticut about trash talk, and what was great is they found that if you are a person who is being trash talked towards and you don't have that mindset of I'm going to block this out or ignore it, it can really psychologically affect your game, how you play. And they did this study with people playing video games, competitive video games. So only imagine what it would do at a big scheme or, on the field on a Friday night, or a baseball, or on the rink, or on a court. So
with like even more adrenaline running.
Yes, it is a big, I think it shows two things. It shows that there definitely is a emotional process to thinking in game, and that can definitely be disrupted with people. It doesn't have to be other team, but it can be fans, it can be coaches trash talking, or even just saying stuff that you might not want to hear or you take to heart. Like that's going to affect the big thing. Excuse me. So, I mean, it's definitely a tactic you want to use, but it's going to be studied. I just found it interesting that they're putting studies together that are going to test this and see how well people will withstand to it. And I think that it's going to be a good thing in the future. If you play a sport, you're going to probably expect some of this at some times, back and forth, and you're going to have to learn to deal with it. It's going to be one of these things that they might put into practice and be like, all right, you're going to have to deal with this on a bigger scheme if you really want to get good and not get phased by whatever home team you're walking into. So it definitely plays a role. I mean, I've been on both sides of it. When you're young and playing, baseball or football, and you hear some stuff chatter on it, you let it get to your head. After a while, you can. That's the biggest thing. I think a lot of some people, what we're going to talk about today about mindset and motivation, is you can't let outside chatter affect you. You can't let what other people think really bother you, because it will throw you off your game and you become less efficient.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, like even looking back to when I get caught up in that, like letting it kind of get to me, is I become like the victim of my environment or my experiences, and I start blaming external factors, when in reality it's like, if I just take responsibility and look at the situation in terms of like, how can I take control of it, then you don't even get like you first of all, you solve your problem because you move on, you start working towards the solution, and you don't even get that sort of that negative thought pattern.
It was crazy because it said that emotions of anger and shame kind of came together and came to one, rather than you're just having one or the other. So it was on the premise of you're kind of like building this perfect cocktail in someone's brain that is just throwing them completely off, which is hey, I mean, I think
Which was the
I
tactic,
think it's
yeah.
pretty cool, right? Psychological warfare. I mean, that's a huge part to a lot of these things, and even if it's not, even if it's self talk, right? So, say I'm going to go hit a heavy lift, and I'm already in my brain talking, "Oh man, this is heavy. I might not make it." That's me already kind of trash talking me. So you go up to the
Totally.
bar and you don't hit it. That's where I feel that like sometimes I am limited because my own self talk just drives me crazy. You got to learn to shut that down after a while. So it definitely exists. Some people are going to use it. I think it's a good thing, and some people might complain. But if you're one of those people that it's not really affecting you, go do what you do. But if it affects you, your biggest thing is how do you make yourself better, or how do you get past that getting emotional and really let other people's words screw with your performance. You, people have to ask
Oh, gotcha.
themselves.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it is super important. And it's funny because it's so mindset, and we have the opportunity to understand that and look into it and see the greats, and when the greats are in their zone, so to speak, or these elite athletes are in their peak state of performance, we're called flow states. Nothing throws them off their game, and it's like all their being is focused on them performing at their highest level, and that's really what it comes down to. It's like you don't focus on the negative or the crap. You just try to focus on your goal and your mission, and you got to keep doing that. um, yeah, it's pretty cool because it kind of reminds me of how things with peanuts changed. It's a weird little analogy, but it's like maybe people will now see that they need to build up a mental immunity and they need to expose themselves to this stuff, right? And parents will might expose themselves to their kids to maybe a little smack talk here and there, just like playfully, just right because. And the reason I say peanuts is because we went through this scare where all of a sudden 10, 15 years ago people weren't really that allergic, and then all of a sudden a huge outbreak of peanut allergies, and then all of a sudden everyone stopped eating peanuts and said don't feed them to your kids, don't feed them to your kids, and all these severe allergic reactions came out, just like having some contact with something that was in previous contact with peanuts and having that extreme of a nut allergy. And then the um, I forget what government agency came out and said, actually, what's better is you expose your kid to peanuts between 5 and 11 months. Expose them to a little bit of peanuts, a little bit at a time, to get their body built up to the enzymes to break down that specific protein, and you won't have that problem. And it reduced. I remember that statistic alone reduced the rates of peanut allergies by like 80% in those who were previously exposed. So it's pretty interesting because it's just kind of like, you know, we've made a really convenient, happy-go-lucky society, and nobody wants to feel bad. Everyone wants to give participation trophies, and everyone wants a good job, and everyone's parents protects them from falling down on their bike, so to speak, and then you basically put them in a bubble, and now they're destroyed by some smack talk on the field. So hopefully it'll help people realize they need to strengthen that mindset and that reflex of not letting stuff get to you.
Especially maybe nowadays where I don't want to get too wrapped up in it, but people are more sensitive to what other people say, and they almost take it too personally. It's and I know we can go and say, oh well, people find this word offensive, that word offensive. It's like what culture are we actually creating? Because then when you step on a sports field, all those rules like kind of go away. You're there to play football. You're there to play 60 minutes on a field. That stuff doesn't matter. I mean, there's plenty of times when I remember people were just like back and forth swearing F words,
Well, it happens
insults.
in
Sometimes you just laugh and go
public.
by it, but you can't go up, stop the game and complain about this and have like an
Right,
issue. Like stuff's just got
right.
to keep going. We got to become more hardened to
Well, it's
these
like
things.
we're always like problem focused and looking at problems. We just need to be solution oriented. Like, okay, someone's calling me a name. Can I control that? Like, not really in the grand scheme of things. Freedom of speech, they can say whatever they want, right? Reply in a public place, but you can control your reaction. So you can't always control the situation, but you control how you're going to respond to the situation. And I think that's a good takeaway for that article. That's a great article, though. Good find. Good find. Well,
Absolutely.
I think it's time to unleash the influencers and effective gentlemen and women that we've learned from. And oh man, I want to start with the big three so bad, but all right, we'll save them. So I'll start off just anywhere on my list. I'm gonna go with. All right, I'm gonna start with Joe Weider. Joe
I
Weider.
like it. Why'd you pick him? Or what kind of gravitated towards him
Because
for you?
I've followed a lot of training modalities from like in my original lifting days. I'd followed a lot of lifting modalities put out talking about like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbu, and then looking up and see who was their like person who coached them, and then kind of look into him a little bit more. And I feel like he did lay the groundwork. Like I can't say that he didn't influence me, and definitely bodybuilding was one of the initial steps into the industry for me. So I'm gonna say Joe Weider.
Nice. I mean, he is an old school guy. One of like, and that's what I think is good about some of these on our list is, just having that. These aren't always people that are going to be like living right now, or the the people who are changing the industry now. I mean, there's going to be people that were grandfathers of this world we call fitness and weight training and lifting and all
Health,
that
yeah,
stuff. As they
nutrition.
brought, yeah, and they brought a lot of this methodology to us that we have, and we're stuff we're using today for programs is stuff that they were just experimenting with back in the day. And what worked, what didn't work. It was for them. It was just trial and error.
Yeah, and I feel like that's another thing that I get from them. Is like I look at them and I see what they did, and it's like they were the pioneers. Like they were just trying it. So it's like I adopted that sort of that mindset of just kind of experimenting, getting wiggle room, try different things, and not always look at like a fact done by a study that says it needs to have 25 reps for progression or something like that. So yeah, I'll definitely say he's an influencer. I guess right along with him would be Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Funny. So I was just thinking, like, I
Yeah,
mean,
we
he's going to
gotta
be.
mention him. It's so important.
Oh
Like,
yeah, but especially anyone who's grown up in the '90s and 2000s, you remember his
pumping
videos, his
iron.
movies, and you're
Oh,
like,
oh,
who is
oh.
this guy? And then you look back and you say, okay, wow, look at his Mr. Olympias, look at his story, what he came from, what he
He's
did. I
really
mean,
inspiring.
you're coming from, yeah, from an era where, or a place where training wasn't even really accepted, and people were like, why is he doing that? And now he's built this, basically this whole image of the sport and built it up. And the big classic one I think everyone should kind of watch is
Pumping
the
iron, pumping
pumping
iron. I was
iron.
just gonna say.
I mean, him him and Lou are just like, holy smokes. I mean, this is back in the day when you don't have crazy amounts of protein powders and supplements. I mean, there was different supplements back then, but I mean, these guys were just hammering it day in and day out. It was
Oh yeah.
just, I mean, that is some stuff back then where
And
it's some good stuff
one
to
thing
take
he
from.
talks about in there is he mentions how he's going to um, win Mr. Olympia and become a U.S. politician and marry a Kennedy, and he did all three of those. So he set out his goals when he was younger, said them on screen on TV or for the documentary, and then went out and executed them. And he's just I get a lot of mindset from Arnold too. I feel like even still to this day, he's just a really all around good dude, and he has a lot of good things to say in terms of health and how to take care of yourself and outlooks on life. And I think he's a good influencer. And
Oh yeah, all
yeah,
around.
and yeah, that's about all I gotta say. Oh, and, and there's a whole competition that based like that he came up with, right? The Arnold Classic. I think it was came back in like 1990, and it's still around to this day. So he's just such a big, impactful person. Um,
And it's insane now where I don't know what it was back in the 90s. I would assume it's more bodybuilding, but now you have like power lifters, you have, world record deadlift being set
yeah,
there. You have, I mean,
he's
that's a
expanded.
big thing
He
that
knew
he
that it
should.
wasn't just bodybuilding. That was just one way of people getting interested into the realm, and it drew a lot of attention.
And
But it brought the the group together under one house of like fitness and strength, so to speak. I guess 'cause it's not always necessarily about
yeah,
health in those regards. We got to remember sometimes those guys definitely
pure gold mindset sometimes.
forego their long term goals with short term gains. But right along with those names, I also want to mention. Um, I don't know which way to go with this. Jack LaLanne. I'm going to say Jack LaLanne because he brought gyms to the world. Between Joe Weider and Jack LaLanne, they made gyms a mainstream thing to do and a place to go. And before then, it was just like aerobics classes on TV and group fitness classes you'd watch on DVD or DVD back then. No, it was VHS.
Maybe not even that. It's like, whew.
Yeah. 8 track. But
But these are people who are the ones who kind of started it, and this is why we are successful where we are today because of them. I mean, if you would have said in what maybe the 40s or 50s, oh, we're gonna put weights in a building and have a gym, people would laugh at you, be like, why?
yeah,
Like, who does that? I mean, there was a select few people who were doing it. I think colleges were doing them. Not as big though, not as much in certain other places, but it wasn't like a standard norm. Nowadays, it's everyone else. Oh, do you go to a gym? Where do you work out? Because it's a staple of life. And as we're coming up through a lot of some of the people like that I have is are Dr. George Brooks, who wrote probably one of the best books on physiology there is, and that was basically my way into learning this whole field. So it is amazing, and so many authors out there have just guided me to where I am right now, and done the research too, and put the work in, and I'm sure failed a lot.
yeah, yeah. Talking about failing a lot. I mean, that could go so many ways. Right? There's still a bodybuilder, two bodybuilders I want to list off, but there's also some authors I want to list off. But now you're talking about failure. Like I gotta list off some more pinnacle foundational pieces, at least in my world. Um, Back to the Roman Emperor days of Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, and these guys laid the foundation for Stoicism, and I just love that all their quotes and their mindset and the way that they position things, and a lot of it is just like you can't control everything around you, but you control yourself, and you manage yourself, and you better yourself, and you don't worry about your neighbor, and you just make it about yourself. And I think that's so important because we're all each a unique individual, and if we all just worried about developing our true nature and ourself and being better person for society in that regards, then we would all come together and be just that much smarter because everyone's expanded and found their own expertise. Because it's not about one mode of thinking or one way of living. It is individualistic, and it is a case, like a custom based um, ideology. But there is a good benchmark for kind of the foundational pieces, and a lot of it talks about just like when I wake up in the morning, I will tell myself, um, "Oh, I can't recite." Of course, off the top of my head, like the pressure's on. When I wake up in the morning, whatever. I'm going to deal with people who are meddling, ungrateful, dishonest, and unruly. But I'm not going to like be rude to them or angry with them. And I know that I'm from the same. I'm not from the same blood or birth, but I'm from the same background, and we both have the same sort of calling, so to speak. And it's just about kind of trying to understand your fellow neighbor and just being a better individual yourself, and taking everything as a lesson of individualism, and on your own path to figuring things out and getting stronger. So I know it's a kind of a long-winded explanation, but I think that pretty much sums up why I want to list those Roman philosophers.
Even when you look back, and I wasn't even thinking about going that far back or even thought about it,
Yeah,
but now that you mention it, you thinking that there's so many, and it doesn't, not necessarily exercise wise, but just leaders. There's obviously good leaders and bad leaders, but back then when you had such dominant countries and empires, some leaders just knew how to lead, and they led right, and they wrote down a lot of good content and a lot of concepts and theories and ways of living that a lot of people still probably follow today. So I'm more thinking like the ancient Greeks, or just like people you mentioned, the Romans. And I know not all were good, but some of their sayings and their philosophers, or oh, what's the one you always say? Aristotle or
oh
Socrates?
gosh, yeah, and Plato and Aristotle,
Yeah,
like,
like them. It's just that concept of their thought, or
and
all disease stems
Socrates.
from the gut. It's
Yeah,
just
all these guys, like, yeah, we'll take a brief pause here for Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus. Um, they were just brilliant. And if you think about a time where there's nothing really to do except sit around and have philosophical conversations, right? I shouldn't say there's nothing to do, but they weren't inundated with 24/7
no
stimulus the way
cell
that this
phones back
society
then.
is. Yeah. Um, so I just feel like they had more time to really think this stuff out, and the wording, the verbiage is just so eloquent that it just sinks right in. And I think they're just such a foundational piece to my personal philosophy that's why it was important for me to
Yeah.
mention at least two of those names. And I think you're right. There's so many historical names that we could list off, but I wanted to be able to like give us a little bit of time, but not too much time, because I didn't want us to think too hard. I wanted it to be kind of ones that we were like, oh, definitely. You know what I mean? Like the ones sort of that came to mind more readily, and so that they're more relevant to our lives today. So I feel like we just gotta start rattling off names.
How do you want to break it down? Nutrition,
No, just go
exercise,
back and forth.
mindset.
Like you say a name and say why they influenced you. Might say why they influenced me, or why I like them or not, and then I'll say a name and do the same thing, and we'll go back and forth
Roll with it.
like rapid fire. We need like a rapid fire round.
Me,
And if there's
through
anyone
the
we want to stop and dive into, we can always do that.
okay. So probably one of the biggest influence nowadays is the founder of the Apostle Restoration Institute is Ron Huruska for me.
Okay.
His teaching, his insight, his wisdom. I mean, all the stuff he's putting out and continues to put out and challenging me as a trainer and a PRT is just unbelievable. And then some other people in there is James Anderson. He's another affiliate member of PRI. So they're definitely a big influence on me and kind of push me into that more thinking of along the lines of what they teach in that, and asymmetries, and how this can be implemented and how it affects the whole system. And
Yeah.
it's much bigger than what we actually think it is.
And I guess my only experience with them, like personally, is just hearing you get so excited or nerding out about something, and literally just sounding like a page from a textbook, but like you understand it. So it's just really
Yeah.
funny, and I'm just like, wow, these motherfuckers know what they're doing, obviously. But
Yeah, so over the past couple, I say more than a couple of years now, that influence has been huge on me. So that's probably my top where I look to get higher more information or what's up to date and keep going to courses. So that's a big one for me.
well, I'll stick with the fitness, and I gotta say that some big influencers um, that helped me get sort of a more all encompass approach, or like a 360 view to fitness rather than just weights. But they were still really fitness geared people, were Paul Chek and Mark Sisson. And Paul Chek had a lot of really good stuff and good articles out there that really defied common knowledge and defied some possibilities of stuff. So it just kind of opened my eyes up to like new ways of looking at something. Um, and he just has a really good analytical mind. I like hearing him talk. Same with Mark Sisson. Mark Sisson a little bit differently though, because he's less detail oriented per se and more about how can we get people up and moving? How can we apply this? What's the big picture here? And I think he's a really good um, advocate for just longevity in general.
Yeah, I haven't dove into much of his stuff, but enough where like you're like, yeah, this guy gets it. He is on the right path. And I mean, for anyone listening, I think that does he have a podcast?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
go check that out.
His are so intense that I'll like have to replay them and like hear it 3 or 4 times. It's dense, but it's good. It's like right to the meat and potatoes of things. He's all about like let's get this information to people. Like it's not rocket science. It's just we just got to get it in front of people so that they see the truth, so to speak, right? But he has a podcast, and he actually has a great interview with Rob Wolf on his podcast. It's a really good episode.
And then definitely recommend his Primal Blueprint book. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I have that sitting right here.
It's definitely a must on the bookshelf there.
Jeez. Okay. So I have to say Dr. Jason Fung because he's wrote the book, The Complete Guide to Fasting, and he brought fasting to the world essentially in a easy attainable way that wasn't just calorie restriction, and he helped people understand that you can't just eat less to lose more because your body will adjust its metabolic rate. Yeah, he's definitely a forefather of fasting for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's so many, and I would say another good one for me is the founder of the Precision Nutrition, John Berardi. I mean that
Ah,
whole
okay.
pattern and template and book that he's put together is unbelievable, and another definitely book that you should have on your bookshelf if you're a coach. I highly recommend going through the Precision Nutrition certification. It's so worth it, and the amount of knowledge you'll gain from it is unbelievable. But even just to have that resource readily at hand and that knowledge is unbelievable. Like for nutrition standards, it's high up there, and a lot of articles written through him through the Precision Nutrition and by him are just absolutely amazing, and they can definitely relate. So it's not crazy out there. He kind of puts it more modernistic to how people will adjust to that stuff.
Mm. Um, I'm gonna stick with my doctors in nutrition, and I'm gonna say um, Dr. Perlmutter because he started the whole grain brain, the idea behind
Ooh.
gluten causing minor inflammation in the brain and leading to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's because it was coming at such a high rate. And he did a lot of good research on different inflammatory biomarkers and how to read for inflammation markers and how to treat it and how to use diet to heal your body. And he was definitely a big influence for me.
I forgot about that book.
Yeah, it's a good book.
It's a real good book. You're just rolling with the nutrition people. Oh,
I
you're
know.
big.
Well, you
Yeah,
know
I
what?
know, which is
I'm
good.
looking at my list now, and I'm like, wow, I'm clearly one-sided. But
Oh, it's all good.
I'm also just listing off all my nutrition, and then I'm going to get into mindset and fitness. But that's kind of my background is getting
Yeah.
colitis. I had to like dive the fuck in and learn everything I could from every corner of the market. Like I've read stuff about carnivore diets. I read things about vegetarian diets, and people. It's just like our politics. It's people. There's extreme left. There's extreme right. It meets somewhere in the middle.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you look.
Even in the nutrition world,
Yeah, exactly.
it's
Exactly.
amazing. It's amazing.
Exactly. Um, but yeah. So yeah. Yeah. It's your turn. It's your turn.
I'm gonna kind of flip it over to more exercise. I think he's still at UConn. Is Bill Kramer? I mean, he's written a lot of good books, and these books are more on the science side of it. So designing resistant training program, but he's written a lot of good stuff that has shaped my programming, has shaped my knowledge as how exercise science work. They're not really light read books; they're more of textbooks. And so, in my library, you're going to find a lot of textbooks on the shelf. So that's where I kind of stem from. So I know Matt, you have you have I wouldn't say textbooks, but more different style kind of books, which I think are great, which makes us completely different. And me,
Yeah,
because
this is good.
you come in,
Because you're gonna keep listing fitness names that I won't recognize, and I'm gonna keep listing probably
uh,
nutrition names that
oh
you
yeah,
will
so it's
recognize.
great. And then back and forth, you'd always be like, oh, check this book out, and I'll be like, hold on, let me pull my manual book or this book out of the bookshelf. But I do think it's good to have a wide variety of books, and there's always books coming in and out.
Totally. I think it's important to, you know, it's not like one book's gonna be the answer, but it's the journey of reading the book that kind of lets you get some gum to mentally chew on and experience life on that side and that from that perspective and in those parameters, and you can get some stuff and take away from it and apply it to your life, or maybe nothing applies at all. Maybe you read it for the joy of it. But I think that it is important to read some of this new stuff that comes out, like another author that I'll have to list off along with the nutrition stuff is Dr. Joseph Mercola, and he wrote a great book called Keto Fast, and where he differs is breaking up the chapter into or breaking up the book, excuse me, into little chapters of ways of understanding some of these little segments and processes in our body and different modalities that you can do to get different applications of this. And I think um, yeah, I was about to let it leak. I was about to let my
Oh, you
big
almost
one
did.
leak. Ooh,
I know you want
all
to.
right. I know. I was like leading myself there, like to slaughter. All right, your turn. Next one.
Another good exercise one, and he's been on a lot of podcasts and written a lot of good blogs and books, and a good program called Mass Made Simple is Dan John, is one of a real good strength coaches out there.
Keeping it along with the nutrition because I'm almost done. I have Nora Gedgaudas. She is very intelligent woman and very passionate about changing the food industry and um, very much about getting the information and getting the science to the people. And she has actually a primal restoration course that I'm in the process of taking actually, and it's like 58 videos with questions at the end of every video, and every video is an hour long. But yeah, so I'm getting through that. But it was great enough to hear a lot of her stuff and a lot of her content that I bought this course, this class through her. So I got to mention her.
Right on. Right on. Sticking with exercise, not not many books, but I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with this guy is Mike Arthur, who is a strength coach at the University of Nebraska. Has been there for a while, and one of these just pioneers of strength and conditioning. And sitting down and just listening to him talk, and we have all this this new modifications or new ways of doing stuff and this and that. And, you know, he was just said, you know, you got to keep it simple and stick to what we know and research works. If you want to increase performance, you decrease body fat mass and increase muscle mass, and performance will increase. And he sticks by that and still coaches by it. But just to have just the opportunity to learn from him and the whole tactics.
I totally
It's
believe that
great, and
philosophy.
I
I
highly
totally
recommend people
believe that
check out
philosophy.
his video on squatting. If you're a traditional kind of squat person and you want to learn a new way, or your squat's been ineffective or it hurts you, check out his squat video. I think it's on YouTube, but it's unbelievable. Yes, the Arthur
Arthur
Squat method.
squat method.
He is definitely one of those I highly recommend checking out and getting into his kind of realm of how he thinks.
And if you're trying the Arthur squat method, make sure you have appropriate mobility through your subtalar joint in your ankle so that you can get your knee out past your pinky toe. You don't want it caving in towards your big toe. And yeah. Um, I love that you're going with all the fitness guys. And I'm going to finish off my nutrition with Dr. Oh, no, wait. I lied. I have two more. All right. Dr. Walter Longo, because he did a lot of good research on the digestive system, metabolism, hormones, and how they're all working clocks, and how it's like one big um, roadway, right? And cars driving through all the different roads and intersections of a city, and a lot of times when people have health issues or immune disease or any disease in general, what happens is there's a big traffic jam. And he's done a lot of good research in heading us towards a better understanding of the body in its on all of its intricacies and how in depth it
Nice.
goes.
Always.
So I gotta mention
I
him.
would say this is a probably a lesser known name is Mike Mullins. He's a AT. I think he was an AT, a physical therapist, but he's also a PRC, so he's posture restoration certified. He's out of Maine, but he just brings a more integrative approach of thinking to the table. If he's in your area and you have the chance to hear him talk, I mean, by all means, he might confuse you. He might open up a whole new door or can of worms, see what you think you know or what you thought you were doing. But he's definitely a big influencer. Highly recommend check out his website, check out his stuff. Another great one. He's less of a more of a traditional like strength and conditioning, but more of a okay, how do we rehab you, get you pain free movement opened up and less tightness, all that jazz. Another one of my top, but not the top yet.
Love it. I know we're not there yet. Um, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she's done a lot of good studies revolving around health and fitness, and she publishes all her studies for free on her website. And she's just a really good um, influencer as well. She's really passionate about her work, and she's really passionate about bringing the quality of her work to the people. And she does
Yeah.
it all for free. Essentially, people just donate to her, and she's a without me cursing too much on this one, she's an effing badass. So I'm Dr. Rhonda Patrick. You're my last but not least nutrition person, except for the final three, obviously. So we got 20 minutes. We need to go like double rapid fire.
So
List
the
off
next
two
one is
names at
not
a time.
really. It's kind of interesting. This person doesn't really fall into the, I would say, fitness kind of health nutrition category, but more of the mindset is. Everyone kind of knows me as I'm a big a Jocko person, so that's Jocko Willink. Obviously, he's got his podcast, he's got Extreme Ownership, he's got some books. Uh, oh
I
yeah,
didn't know you were
oh
a Jocko
absolutely.
fan.
So
Oh,
uh,
heck yeah.
just for his
Nice.
mentality, his mindset, and just his approach that he takes to every day and how he carries himself. I think it's you don't even have to say much about it. It's just he knows what to do. He puts out a good message, and what to do and how to react. And he's obviously a big mindset shaper for me. Same thing. My looking at his books on my bookshelf right now. I pretty much have all of them. Have his audio tracks and all that stuff. So check him out if you need some motivational stuff or just hard drive stuff.
Nice. Well, so along with that, I'll go with David Goggins because he's just so great to listen to, and his story is just so motivational, so inspiring, and not necessarily because I have what it takes to be any percentage of the beast that is David Goggins, but because it can shed a light onto my situation and allow me to pull some strength from some dark place to when I need it for pushing myself to limits. So I love David Goggins. He's definitely an imprint in my brain that I'll keep with me wherever I go. And along with his mindset stuff, I'm gonna just kind of lump a couple guys together here. Ronnie Coleman and CT Fletcher, because CT Fletcher had a really hard story and um, really rough upbringing, but he didn't let himself become a victim of his circumstances, and he overcame it. And he was all about like strength and tough mentality, and he's always pushing to extreme limits. You can look up like Death Row. That's a good example of CT Fletcher's relentlessness in the gym, where they just max out on a dumbbell row and work all the way down the ladder. Yeah, it's like that one huge drop set. But yeah, he's just a really inspiring guy. It's a good motivational speaker. And then Ronnie Coleman, he, uh, he had a lot of perspectives and silly little tricks to help yourself get stronger and mentally get stronger as well, because he would always say like if you're going for a PR, when you're done with the PR, tell yourself lightweight. And he would scream it, he's being all dramatic and um with like whatever and enthusiastic about it. But it was like the mindset of like, that's now light. I did that. I'm gonna put that behind me, and not to say that like I'm gonna just get a 10-pound PR heavier that next day, but no, I'm gonna put in the work and put in the time, and this weight's gonna be lighter to me and lighter to me. Now that I hit it once, I'm gonna hit it twice. I'm gonna hit it 3 times. I'm gonna hit it 4 times. I'm gonna be super tired and hit at the end of my workout. So I think he has a lot of good stuff like that, and um, a lot of his training modalities, so failure and stuff like that I've adopted through the years, and definitely in the beginning, kind of along with Arnold Schwarzenegger
The
and
best part
Joe
about
Weider.
especially Arnold and Ronnie is their motivational stuff on top of what their fitness stuff is great. And I kind of like that we're doing motivationals more towards the end, because that I think for me that plays a little bit of bigger
Yeah,
role. So yeah, you have all this. The nutrition stuff is pretty set in
I
stone.
agree.
You have these tactics, your ways, and then the fitness stuff it's all there written out. It's basically science. It's been studied. We know that. But I think the motivation part has the biggest impact with people. And when you wake up in the morning and you will turn on the television and you're just watching nonsense, or do you personally, I know you do this, Matt, is wake up and you have a quote of the day, or you have a list of compiled stuff that you like to read that motivates you. I think that goes a lot further, or most of the time, all the time, than some of the other influencers. So these influencers at the end, I think that even though they could be as far from fitness as possible, they still have a astounding impact on people's lives. And that's why people go to listen to motivational talks all the time from these big people. It's because they're trying to find that inner drive. And you just got to search YouTube and actually go to like the Rock's inspirational motivation video, and you'll be like fired up, because this guy is another one on my list. It's like this guy just built everything from nothing, from the ground up. I mean, he was, we all know his story. Another one, basically
Yeah,
poor as all can be, and look where he is now. So it goes a long way to with what these people are giving back to society in just words.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I think a lot of those quotes that still reign true in my life actually come from the Roman Emperor people: Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. And it's just crazy to me how their words are the most impactful in my life on a everyday basis.
Just let
You know,
go.
another oh
Throw it
sweet, I
out.
almost went to my big three. um, I know. Well, we'll save it. We'll save it. But another, before we get off fitness, I'm going to wrap it up on my end of fitness. I'm going to mention Gray Cook, Mike Boyle, Eric Cressy, and I'm going to also mention Peter Attia. And I'm going to put all these guys in one category. Well, yeah, for the lack of time, but also because they're all really brilliant, pioneer esque people who didn't necessarily do anything fancy, just looked at the fundamentals more closely and longer than anyone else. And Gray Cook did his book Movement with Mike Boyle. Eric Cressy is all about movement in terms of performance, and along with Mike Boyle too. And Peter Attia just has a really scientific mind in terms of fitness and nutrition and performance. And he himself is an elite level athlete as well. Really, all four brilliant
Yeah.
names, and all four pretty different. So I'm gonna wrap that up with my fitness, and you know what's great is leading me into mindset for influential people is Albert Einstein, and he was one who people say, "Oh, he's a genius." He's a genius. He said, "I'm not a genius. I just stick with the problem longer," and that's a great segue because that's what I feel like Peter Attia, Eric Cressy, Gray Cook, Mike Boyle did. Is they didn't they just like would they literally stuck with the problem longer. And that's how they developed the solutions they have and the theories that they've come up with. Like Mike Boyle and Gray Cook came up with pendulum theory and joint by joint theory. So there's very
I like it.
influential people, especially
You
in
ready to?
today's world. So yeah, Albert Einstein with mindset also because of he failed calculus. He
What?
dropped out of
I forget the
college
exact
calculus, but
where I
look where
heard
he
of it.
ended up.
Isn't there some truth along where a lot of those greats or great people who are done great things in this world were failures at something or dropouts of college or high school? That I mean, it's if you just look at that stuff, it is absolutely amazing,
Yep.
and you don't have to read much about the person or just know that and see where they went. It's like, okay, this if they did this, then there's definitely more I can do. Or if you're out there, that mindset of yeah, you failed, great, get up and do something again, or keep at the problem. It because it's not going to go away, and that's what I love about motivational people. And I think I'd just say one of mine
Yeah.
probably big ones is Bear Bryant
Yep.
alone from obviously his coaching, his collegiate coaching, but his just his quotes, his how he kind of attacked every situation, and I'd, I'd highly recommend looking up some of his quotes on failure and why we're doing certain process and teamwork. It resonates with me a lot and goes a long way. And I've obviously always been a pretty big quote guy, and I kind of get fired up by quotes. So he's definitely up there for me.
Um, Bruce Lee from different quotes. Really inspirational guy. Some of the stuff he did was actually pioneering in the way he used electricity for muscle stimulation. If I had to pick a quote off the top of my head, it would be knowing's not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We
These
must
guys are
do.
just so ahead of their time sometimes. That's awesome.
Seriously, well, you know, they didn't have this. I blame the constant stimulation, never having time to yourself, never having people forced to have to like look into their own thoughts and development. And you know, there's great growth in going on a long hike and being in the middle of nature with nothing else but your thoughts. And you know, you're talking about kind of different routines with quotes and stuff like that, and how important mindset is. Like, I think it's also important that I wake up and I meditate for anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, and that's it. Just 2 to 5 minutes every morning. And sometimes when I really want to, I'll come home and I'll when I feel inspired, I might meditate later that evening before bed, or I'll meditate a long one on the weekends. But for scientific advantages, improving your telomere length, your fabric, or the long, not fabric, what would they be called? Little like microvilli on the ends of cells that communicate with other cells. And they talk about your telomere length being the most important for longevity and most susceptible to growth in the morning. So that's why I meditate first thing in the morning, to improve
A lot
the
of the
way my
people
mind will work.
you gotta learn from the past. I mean, that's the
But
biggest thing, is just taking what they did, applying it to yourself. You're gonna learn, you learn from them, and it's a continuous cycle and pattern. And if we've
I
just
think this
named what,
episode should be called
than
"Standing
30
on the
people, I'd
Shoulders of
say,
Giants."
which is crazy. It's just who's
I mean, I feel like I have
shaped
30
us
names on
or
my list
had
here.
an
So
influence in
at
how we
least
think and how we
at least
coach and how we
50.
operate and how we've kind of come to make our own processes and ways of coaching and training even better. Uh, I can't say enough about those people we mentioned. And then I think we both have our big three that we're kind of saving out.
Do you have your?
I'll fire away.
Are you waiting for your three? 'Cause I have two other people, like two other groups of people I want to mention. Okay, so I want to mention Lionel Messi, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. Um, I don't even think I need to say more, but but their work ethic and the way they look at work, it's not the way you or I or any other person in this world looks at work. It's like it's food, it's water, it's how they live, it's primal, it's instinctual, it's what they love. They eat, breathe, sleep what they love, and it's their passion. And they developed it in such a way that when they fail, it's exciting for them. It's a way that they can get better. They've opened up this perfection and this repetition to having a mistake, and now they can hone in and figure out how to get better. And I've adopted that kind of mentality from them. And yeah, I could talk about them for fucking an hour easily, so I'll stop there. But Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he explores and he sheds light on fundamentals and phenomena in the world that actually help me understand the fitness world sometimes. And one quote that comes to mind is actually talks about how when we were in the cave, if one guy wanted to go outside the cave and see what was going on out there, if we had just said to that guy, "Hey, why are you doing that? We need to figure out everything in this cave. We haven't figured out the material on this wall. We haven't figured out food. We haven't figured out fire that well. Like, don't do that. We're just planning to figure out here." Then we would have never gotten out of that cave. So he just talks about, like, people talk about, why are we so worried about going to space when there's plenty of problems on the Earth? Well, look how much knowledge has opened up because we've invested in these sciences and explored in different ways, and gotten to the moon and stuff like that. And I can't necessarily articulate right now why that's so apparent, but it just tinkering and exploring and turning over every rock helps the whole learning experience and getting better in any field. So I had to mention those two groups of people, but now we're ready for the final three. So go ahead, Menchie. I'll give you a drum roll. A really crappy drum
nutrition.
roll.
I have Dr. Mark Hyman, a big one for me. A great resource, great book, very well known in the nutrition field. So, number one. Number two is, I know we kind of shared this one, but I've probably read this book, I can't even tell you how many times. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I think everyone, and I will say this every time I mention this book, everyone should read this book and know where determination, mindset, and the will to live and love comes from. He's definitely one on. And then my other big third one is going to be Mr. Conditioning himself, Joel Jameson. I mean, the stuff he's written and produced and put out is unbelievable. So definitely a big influence in how I program conditioning into every aspect of my life.
Yeah, I don't think it's funny because we've spent so much time talking about all these people, and it's like the big three don't even really need an introduction and don't even really need much explanation. But I totally share um, Viktor Frankl with you, and I was going to definitely mention it in my top three until we talked ahead of the show, and then I figured I could actually pick someone better off, and the one I went with was Shunryu Suzuki, and he wrote the book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and it's a really important book because it helps lay the foundation understanding for Zen, which is just the word for self, and it's a good book to help develop yourself and learn your mind and get stronger in all different aspects of your life. And meditation is one of those modalities. And the book is just informal talks on meditation, so it's a really fun read because chapters are like 1 to 2 page little lessons. You read it, get a little mental gum, and then go to bed or go to work. And some of the stuff, it's funny how some of the stuff can pop up in the middle of the day and just shed light on different situations and help you stay centered and stay yourself in all scenarios. And, you mentioned Joel Jameson, and he's such a genius. And I think really good uh, start. I shouldn't say start, but really good place for people to go to look up fitness and gym modality resources. I would say more like intermediate stuff though. So then my big exercise influencer is Scott Cochran, strength and conditioning coach out of Alabama. He's very effective at what he does, and a lot of what he does is about mindset as well. He incorporates it into his training philosophies, and I love that. I love his single leg wall sit assessment. I love his wind sprints to help people get hit a wall and push through it, and I love that he sits down with all of his athletes and understands their home life and their background and what their stress is, because it plays a role into the performance into the gym and onto the field. So I love that he incorporates it. So Shunryu Suzuki for mindset, Pat Crocken for fitness, and the big one, which I'm sure everyone could have guessed, for nutrition, Dr. Gundry, because his life work, he is a heart surgeon. He worked for the American Heart Association, and his life's work has now been redirected to helping people understand how you can fix all disease with nutrition and exercise. And I love all the content he puts out. The Plant Paradox, the Longevity Paradox. He has his own podcast as well. And that wraps us up. You have anything else you want to say?
I think we covered everything.
I think so too. All right, folks. That's all. Stay tuned if you want to listen to After Hours. Oh man,
That's a lot of people.
that was a really fun episode, honestly, because it forced me to have to not stick on one person too long. And I think one of my problems is I go off on tangents maybe a little too much, and yeah, I might have to put out a survey about, do you like these rants? Yes or no? Just see what the public thinks. But hey, we still got a good 50 to 150 unique downloads every episode, so we're doing something that people want to keep listening to.
We'll take it. We'll
Yeah.
absolutely take it. People keep listening. We like it.
Did you have any names that come to mind that you wish you had said?
No, I have some people from Northeastern when I was there, but they're a lot of people listening would it'd be like another person, so they wouldn't know. But I would say
Yeah,
the probably the whole staff at Northeastern when I was there
that's
uh,
awesome.
is probably one of the a big influence and kind of drove me into the PRI realm and life. So definitely one of them. So I highly recommend that program for a lot of people and check out what they do and how they operate,
Yeah,
as well as some
my
other collegiate programs out there that still or that don't. They do run PRI based stuff out of highly integrated systems.
gotcha. Yeah, I had names like you said that no one would have recognized. Like two people from my very first gym, and then a man, Danny from Equinox, and then I was going to mention Emmett, who we interviewed in the first season, and those two people influenced me a lot into where I'm at today. And then the two clients that I had at my first gym, they just had really inspiring stories. I mean, that guy I told you about who was paralyzed, who fixed himself just by time and staring at his fingers. And then another guy who used to be a Buddhist monk, and he's had the rap sheet of really rare and deadly ailments thrown his way, and he's survived all all against the odds. And he's just an anomaly of a person. And but yeah, no one would have understood those names. So I think it was good we stuck with names that people at least might relatively recognize, or at least what can Google and can find.
But the best thing about influencers and a lot of people, I think they look sometimes too big. So you don't have to look crazy. They could just be people around you at work. People, your friends can be influencer. Anyone can be an influencer in someone's life. We don't always have to have these big crazy influencers that are these famous people. Now obviously it's okay to have them, and we all do have them, and I think that's really great because everyone's got a unique individual story told. And once you hear that story, you're like, wow. And then you kind of follow them or read their stuff, and they become an influence in your life. And that's how you want to conduct yourself. I think that's a big thing. Uh, there are also a lot of bad influencers out there. I can pick up my telephone right now and go to Instagram and find a lot of poor poor examples of influencers who think they're doing good but they're not doing good. So for obviously people out listening, find what you want to do and what path you want to go in life and find the big influencers in that. I mean, we're a fitness and health and mindset nutrition based uh, team duo. But if you're listening for other reasons, I mean, you go find influencers if you're in the business field for business, or if you're a baseball player, go find people in the baseball field. There's all different fields out there where you can find influencers. And sometimes there are people that aren't even in your field that can influence you. So uh, it's one of those things where I think everyone has to have them. They're great to have, but they don't necessarily have to be like on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook every single day, just jarring.
Yeah, it's there was a TED talk talking about it, and it's actually like a nationwide issue of depression and anxiety and just negative self talk and in general from people talk, and it stemmed from social media.
Mm.
And it's because basically people are using that as a way of kind of subconsciously comparing themselves, and they don't always recognize that, like, first of all, you don't always recognize all the work that goes into someone's successes, but you don't always recognize kind of the smoke behind, like the smoke and mirrors going behind everything. Because a lot of times with all these really big influencers, all this stuff is given to them kind of for free to promote because of advertisement space, and have like sometimes these people will rent expensive things or vehicles and take pictures with them and post them, and people are comparing their internal selves, the themselves that they know so well, with the mask of what someone's trying to portray, and it leads to no nos, no good.
It is very tough hearing especially people on Instagram that if they're famous, they're called influencers or Instagram influencers. That it's yes, some are good, some are bad, but it's if you want to be influenced and you're following someone and you're influenced by them, just make sure that they're aligning with your goals and they're not just selling you a product or influencing you to do bad things because they just get a million likes for whatever they do and you might get 10 and feel crappy about yourself like you said. So definitely a big issue, and always align yourself where you want to be, where you want to go, and what your goals are, because if you don't align yourself, then they're not going to happen. And we've heard from or about a plethora of people tonight who basically align that goal and has influenced you and I and still lead us onto our goals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And stay inspired to still have a drive because definitely a lot of those motivational people that we listed off um, are really good sources of strength when you're in dark places or when you're waking up not feeling it or in depression or whatever. Like hearing some of that motivational stuff or the way they pulled themselves out of their evil is inspiring and a little relieving. But yeah, I think that kind of ends us today, and yeah, we'll see you guys next week.